name is Bryan DeNovellis, and for the next 45 minutes, I will be your moderator with this, my esteemed colleagues here. Thank you all very much. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2017 Monmouth Film Festival Industry Panel. Good evening. My name is Bryan DeNovellis. I will be moderating this panel. And before I get started, I'd just like to say thank you and congratulate Nick Marchese, who is running this film festival. He organized it all in 9 months, and I just want to say what a wonderful job he has done putting together all of these incredible independent films that could be stacked up at any film festival across the country. So thank you, Nick. A round of applause to Nick. I hope you had a chance to see some of the films already and the films that will be coming tonight. But right now, for the next 90 minutes, what Nick has done and his team, they've assembled some of the best, some of the brightest, and if I do say so myself, some of the best looking talent in the industry, in television and in film. And for the next 90 minutes, we hope that we all can share some of our experiences with you, shed some knowledge, so please take some notes, relax, have a cream soda, glass of milk, and definitely have great questions, because the last 30 minutes we're going to open it up to all of you for questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce all of the panel members, starting to my right at the far side. That is Thomas Crowell. He's an entertainment lawyer, and his clients range from award-winning comic book publishers to the creators of some of the world's best-known superheroes. He represents a wide variety of people in the business: sculptors, painters, magicians, 80s cover bands. Maybe like the B Street Band or Tramps Like Us? Rubik's Cube. One of my favorites, Big Shot, but that's just me. Excellent. And he's also the author of some books like The Pocket Lawyer for Filmmakers. Thomas, I see you reaching into your bag of tricks. Yes. Just happen to have one right there. The Pocket Lawyer for Comic Book Creators. So he is on the entertainment side, but Thomas has also been a producer. He's been in front of the camera as well and brings a wide variety of experience. Next to him, Jeremy Profe. He is a filmmaker, self-taught fields in both writing and directing. Jeremy's also been in front of the camera, but recently, you may have seen it or you may have heard of it, he directed the Lennon Report, and that's garnered Best Director Award at the Beverly Hills Film Festival, where it's a documentary going back into what caused or what may have happened during the shooting of John Lennon. It was released theatrically nationwide last year. Did I get that right, Jeremy?
It's a drama.
Drama, not a documentary. A narrative, correct?
Yeah, it's a narrative drama. It's actors. It's not doc.
Okay. I apologize.
Okay.
But it's done very well.
Yes.
Yes. So I got that right.
I'm told.
Jenna is a film producer and director. She wrote, directed, and produced her first feature-length film, Ben's Plan, that won Best Drama, and Action on Film at the Action on Film Film Festival, correct? Jenna currently has a film that she co-wrote and directed named The American Side, which is currently running on Netflix. So welcome, Jenna. And next to Jenna is John Green. John is the executive producer of special programming at ABC News, where he has been on staff for 22 years. He's also a former producer and executive producer of Good Morning America. He's produced a number of specials on 2020 and also currently runs a production company with none other than Robin Roberts. To my left is Taimak. I got the wrong notes, so maybe I should just start over again. On my left is Taimak. He is an actor and director who landed his first break at just 19 years old. Some of you in this audience are probably too young to remember this, but I've actually seen it. Gentleman by the name of Berry Gordy, Motown legend, cast him as the lead in the 1985 cult classic, The Last Dragon, where he did not play Denzel Washington, but he played Bruce Leroy, a Bruce Lee wannabe. So that was his first break in acting, but since then he's appeared in a number of television roles and stage plays, and this is where he caught my attention. For those of you Janet Jackson fans, he was in one of Janet Jackson's videos called Let's Wait a While. So I love Janet Jackson. And recently, you may have seen his film here today. He directed I've Seen Things, which was a short, which was just shown about a half hour ago. He directed, wrote, produced, and starred in that. So a man of many trades. Now we get to Jen Fineran, who is an Emmy Award-nominated editor. She has edited several award-winning documentaries, including I Married My Family's Killer. That must have been a lot of fun. Her work has aired on various networks, including PBS, AMC, Independent Film Channel, A&E, MTV, Bravo, Netflix. So she's done a wide variety of editing that has appeared everywhere. And on the left, on the far left, is David Schoner, currently an associate director of New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission. What that means is if you want to get your film shot here in New Jersey, you have to go through David and his mustache. So that's properly placed, I might say. So welcome, everybody. As you heard, we have a wide range of talents, from acting to directing to producing to editing. They've done a lot, and a lot of them have done all of those. So our goal is to kind of share with you their experiences. So let's open it up to anyone who wants to start just by saying, what is the way that you broke into the business or found your way to get into the business and to do what you wanted to do? Because I'm guessing all of you didn't start out doing what you wanted to do, or did you?
Well, for me, I was a kid, like a lot of children, you know, you have these dreams of, you know, that you think are bigger than you, you know? I don't know if, raise your hand if you guys had a dream that's bigger than you think you are, you know? So for me, I think everybody to a certain degree identifies with that. I was like that as a kid because I came from a really tough background. I was very shy and I was going through a lot, but I always had this dream. And I didn't go about it the traditional way of going to acting classes and you know, doing theater or going out for auditions. I had a dream. And then I was on this journey, and on the journey, there was this film called The Last Dragon. And it was everybody and their mother and was going out for my role, you know, the role that I eventually got. But at first it was very difficult because I just didn't think I was that person that could be a star of a film, even though it was always a dream I had, you know. I was a martial artist. And what happened was I had a chance to get an audition, and I did terrible, you know, because I thought I was going to be on a stage like this doing martial arts, and, you know, and I was in a little office with a casting director that had a lot of professional actors in the room, and he sent me home. And that's, in short, because I want to give everybody else time to talk, that's what I think it was most important for a lot of young people to hear, is that you always think the dream is going to go a certain way, you know? You know, you walk out the door and you might feel very confident, or you may not, but if you feel really confident, you learn that things don't always work out the way you want. You have to learn how to flow, you know, like water. You have to learn how to flow with things, and then you'll find your way. But, you know, that's me.
I took a very strange path in. My story is more about arrogance than anything. I kind of looked at the process of filmmaking, and I have a lot of relatives that work in film. They're gaffers and grips, and they work on crew. And I never really wanted that. And I just kind of looked at filmmaking and thought, I could do that. And
How old were you? How old were you?
I made my first short at 29, but I think I wrote my first script at 24. That first actual screenplay came as sort of an outpouring of a broken heart. I was in the middle of a really rough breakup, and I wrote a screenplay about a man who falls in love with two separate women, and they really just represented two different aspects of a woman that I was sort of mourning the loss of. And I just looked at this and I said, oh yeah, that's a cakewalk, I can do that. And it turns out in the long run, I wasn't wrong. I did end up making films, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it is one of those things where occasionally, when you're pursuing your dreams or when you have a huge opportunity in front of you or something to that effect, you just have to jump out of the plane and learn to fly on the way to the ground. And that's my story and how I got in.
I would say, in a practical sense, for me, education and the internship, the holy internship, was the way in. And I wanted to bring that up because a lot of people who are trying to get into news and documentary producing, which is what I've done for the last 25 years, they want to know, am I better off just honing my practical skills getting in the industry, or do I stay in school and get a higher education? I have a pretty definitive opinion about that. Stay in school, especially if you have access to scholarship money, or if you have parents that are fortunate enough to be able to provide your way through graduate school. The reason is because most, when you're trying to get your foot in the door, like I was in network television, the best way to get your foot in the door is through an internship. And nowadays, as was the case 20 years ago, most internships are unpaid, and the only way that they can legally bring you in as interns is if you're receiving college credit or graduate school credit. So I've had people that are not in school, and I've advised them to just go to their local community college and sign up for internship, a 3-credit internship course, and sometimes that could be as little as $500, and that is your way to get into the whole internship system. So my story is that I was in graduate school in Boston and getting a degree in communications, concentrating on my writing because I knew I wanted to do something in the writing field. I didn't know exactly what it was, and I just applied for an internship at a local TV station, got the internship, and then was offered a job out of that internship as a news writer in a local newsroom up there. Then I knew I wanted to work in network television in New York. I decided to start writing the executive producer of Good Morning America, sending him my resume, never heard back, and I just kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I figured one day the phone will ring, and sure enough, it did. I think it was about a year and a half after I was incessantly sending my cover letter and a resume, they called me down for an interview, and thankfully I did pretty well at the interview, and they offered me a job. So the two lessons that I would impart, especially to people that have a mind to stay in school, take advantage of the internship, and then once you have the internship experience and you're ready to apply for the real job, just be persistent and don't take no for an answer.
I think that's key, because I think at some point in all of our careers and all of your careers, you've been told no. You've been told you couldn't do this or couldn't do that. So how do you overcome what seems to be a door closing in your face, and how do you not take no for an answer? Or could you share something that happened to you where you were told no, 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 and suddenly all it took was one person to say yes?
Sure. Well,
okay.
Yeah, I can. Well, along those lines, actually, one of the things I would have said in previous to the last question was that no is never really an answer. It's just there's another way to ask or another person to ask, because you will get no's all the time. It is the nature of the beast. And it's actually how I came into making my first film. As I was getting to know all these filmmakers. I have a theater background, and they're all talking about what they would do someday if, when this, when that, like as if everything was going to line up perfectly. And I was like, well, this isn't going anywhere. And so that's what made me start my first film, and it was a lot of asks and a lot of like finding your collaborators, finding the people that support you, finding the people that are game, because it is like you're running a small business as a director. I was a writer, director, producer on that. Everybody has to play a part, and everybody has to feel like they've got skin in the game, and to do that, you have to be able to take the no's and turn them around and find the yeses. And so one great example was I was walking, I just dropped sides off to one of the actors, and I was working with child actors on my first film, so that's a smart way to go. But I had just dropped off sides, and I was walking home to my apartment, and it was, we were gonna be shooting around Christmas time, and it was really cold, and my mom called me from California. I live in New York City, and she wanted to know how it was going, and I was starting to stress because I knew I had enough money for sound for the first week, but I didn't know about past then. And she said, well, you can't, well, you should probably stop now then, honey. That's, you know, she had all the wise mom things to say. And I was like, this is bigger than me. Like, we have to keep going. And I came home, and there was a phone call from a guy who had seen something I had done previously, happened to have tickets to a show. Did I want to go? I couldn't because of this project I told him I was doing. And he said, well, how much, what's going on? Maybe I can executive produce this for you. And all of a sudden I gave him the script, and he provided the rest of the money, and I had sound for my whole film. So it's one of those things where when you're in the trenches and you have this goal and you have this thing you're working towards and people are working towards it with you and for you, you just got to keep your ears and your eyes open and keep finding the yeses because they are there. And I had a friend call on my behalf to The Mill, which is a phenomenal grading house in New York City. They did all my color correct for free. The people who do the Geico and all these great, do Troy and all these amazing movies, they did all my title credits for fun and for free because people made calls on my behalf, because I think you start to find your collaborators and your supporters and you push, and people get excited when you're excited about something, and it's very hard to turn away from that. And maybe a no now is a yes on your next project, which was true for my second film. So that's another thing to think about.
Thomas, I believe you've been rejected?
Many times. But I actually started out in my career at film festivals very much like this one. So I want to give a plug to all of you first coming to the film festival, and those of you especially who have entered it. I started making films with Super 8 film. That's how long ago I started. When I was a kid growing up in Montclair, and I entered the New Jersey Young Filmmakers Festival and won way back in the 80s. And that gave me enough sort of street cred to go to NYU. I got a scholarship there, came out, went to Hollywood, convinced that I would open up Variety magazine and see help wanted feature film director, only auteurs need apply. And I was convinced with the NYU education that I had, of course, this was me. I was sadly mistaken. Of course, the thing that I came to realize working in Hollywood is that you absolutely need to understand the business end of the industry. And, I teach at film schools, I teach at law schools, and it's one of the areas that I'm very passionate about because I really think that, for the most part, film schools do an amazing job giving you what you need to know as far as the creative end, but really underserve people when it comes to teaching you about the business end of the industry. And you have to know both. Now, here's the good part of this. Let me get a show of hands. How many producers in the audience? Any producers? Okay, we got a bunch of producers. How many lawyers in the audience? Any lawyers in the audience? Okay, believe it or not, it's a similar skill set. You're juggling logistics, you're making decisions, you're negotiating, you're trying to establish priorities of what's more important, and bottom line, you're dealing with the business end of things. So those of you who can produce can absolutely go into law and vice versa. So for me, I worked my way up as a TV producer at the Science Technology Network. I became head of development there, and it just became sort of a very easy segue to go to a law school from there, because I was already negotiating the kinds of deals that I do now as an attorney. But I have to sort of stress, again, you'll probably hear me say this a number of times during the panel, is that as fun as the shooting the film part is, if you neglect the legal and business aspects, no matter how good your film is, you're going to run into problems when it comes time to talk to a distributor. So I love the creative stuff, but as boring as it may sound, you really do have to take care of your contracts, and you really have to make sure that everything is up to speed. So when you come to somebody like David and say, I'm going to be shooting with children tomorrow, you know what you can and cannot do.
David, did you want to add to that? Because let's face it, I mean, you understand that.
Well, yeah. How I came to be, working at the state film office was much the way John was talking about. Is I was going to school. I was in my first semester of my senior year. At that time, film was where it was at. We're going back 1985. I mean, you wanted to be in film. I didn't want to be on cable TV. I didn't want to do that. And so I was looking, where do I get an internship? And I did my research and found out that the state of New Jersey had a film office. And I was like, no, that's where I want to be. And the cooperative education person kept on trying to stick me at Bayonne Cable. And I did not want to be at a cable TV station. And so I just persisted and kept on sending my application in. And finally, they called me in for an interview, and I passed and came in for my first semester of my senior year. Really got a great hands-on experience of working in the film office, which is really behind the scenes. And then after that, I went back to finish my second semester of college, graduated, and went back to working at a supermarket. I was at a supermarket for a period of time. But one of the things that I took away from the Film Commission is they kept on talking to me about relationships and about the people around you, and to make sure that it's about who you work with, your circle of friends, your people. And so I really stayed in touch with the Film Commission. I would call them constantly. I went down for lunch a couple times. And then in August of that year, they told me that the woman who had the current job was resigning, and that I want to come down for an interview. And went down and got interviewed, and it's been 33 years later. So it's been a big deal. Just to dance off for a second about child labor, that's one of the things that we do, and you really do need to understand the business aspect of it, especially when you're dealing with child labor, film permits, getting all those kind of things. And depending on what your budget is or what you're doing, will help guide you through the process.
So here's a question. So you write your first script. Could be 5 minutes, could be 10 minutes, could be 90 minutes. What then? I mean, who do you go to? How do you protect it? How do you copyright it? What do you do when you have this script?
I copyright my work. I send it to our lawyer at this point, and he takes care of all that stuff for me. My first short film that I ever had produced, I called my friend Raphael, who's here in the audience tonight.
Hi, Raphael.
He was working out in L.A. at Marvel, and he had sort of been odd-jobbing his way through Hollywood, and I said, I got the script, I think it's pretty good, and I sent it to him. I said, I'd like you to produce it, and he said, I'm coming back in October, and we'll get it done. And the idea was we would shoot in like 3 weeks, and it's been 8 years. So we're still business partners, and he still produces all my films, and it's great.
To your right, Thomas?
Okay, let me give you guys some money-saving tips. This is not legal advice. I'm here in my professorial capacity, not as your attorney. Okay, you don't need a lawyer, no disrespect to your lawyers, and I register this on behalf of my client, but you don't actually need a lawyer to register a copyright. Here's a couple of myths I'm going to bust for you. The WGA, the Writers Guild of America, that's not copyright registration. The only thing that is copyright registration is registering it with the United States government, the Copyright Office, at www.copyright.gov.
That's www.copyright.gov.
Thank you. It costs between $35 and $55, depending upon a couple of factors that I won't bore you with right now. But honestly, if you can fill out an online form, if you know your date of birth, if you have a PDF that you can upload, you can register the copyright to your script. And let me tell you, it is $35 that is really well spent, because if you register the copyright to your script and then somebody infringes the copyright, you can bring lawsuit for upwards of $100,000 in damages, even if you haven't sold a script before.
They make it that easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
There is one point I do want to leave you with, though. All of this is, I think, good advice, but if you are writing with somebody, if you're writing with a partner, you have to, I think it's really the best practice, to have an agreement with the partner, a writer's collaboration agreement, because you both may be joint authors to that script, and if you're both joint authors, you both have to sign any document that a film studio might want to put in front of you or a distributor may put in front of you. So it's good to have all of your ducks in a row when it comes to the relationship you have with your writing partner.
Taimak, you just said that that's how you copyrighted your film.
Oh, yeah, yeah, same exact way, .gov. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to add to all that legal stuff, absolute. Writing agreements, very important if you're collaborating. But the other thing, too, is if you're not looking to sell your script, shoot it. Shoot it. You know, you make it, and then that's how you protect it. Now you've got another piece of work to show, and if it's just short, now you've got a card to play, and you've got some work to show somebody, and I mean, just shoot it.
Can I just riff on that for a second? Just one closing note is, don't be so paranoid about somebody stealing your idea. No one can steal your idea. Someone can take your storyline, they can't recreate your characters, they can't speak in your voice. You should be what's special about your script, and if you're not, it's a terrible script. Be special.
I think this is
show of hands. Can you raise your hand if you're an actor? So that's only a few people.
There's a couple up there, over
like
there.
5. And if you're a writer? So it's like 12, something like that. And what else? Well,
Any
DP.
editors?
Thank you, Jen.
All right, somebody must be interested in documentary. It's the golden age of documentary.
Directors?
Easy to get out and shoot documentaries. No documentary?
Documentaries?
You over here? Over there?
Oh, I just wanted to do that to get a little idea.
So Jen,
See, there's no attorneys. You're going to have to motivate these.
So Jen, we haven't touched upon the editing. Let's talk about that. And you know, have you always wanted to be an editor? And what advice do you have to the editors out there?
Since I was a little girl. What do I, so my background is my first film was a feature film to edit, and I found it tedious and boring. The director was lovely, but linear editing, not linear, I did non-linear, but when that story had already been determined for me, as much as you can finesse and shape it, it was boring. I did not like it. I loved the first time I edited a documentary where there was no script, there was no voiceover, there was no narration, there was no beginning, middle, end. It was absolutely creative in how to turn a real-life story into, you know, a 3-act Hollywood, character-driven story was just compelling. So I feel like I have this dream job. I learn about all these different topics, I meet all these different characters, and I get to work closely with the director and we're not really that worried about lighting, we're not worried about not looking good. Sometimes they're big budgets, small budgets, get a lot of involvement in the score, and it's just a super creative job to have that both pays bills, because it's what people are often, you know, it's a big line item, so it's a good way to earn a living, and also be very involved in the craft and the storytelling. And then I also direct my own stuff, so it keeps me kind of very on point with that end of the storytelling. So it's a fun angle to be in, to kind of have a new project my projects are 6 to 9 months, and everyone's fresh. Things are changing, technology constantly changes, so as much as it can become, it's not really old hat, and right at the time that I'm done with it, I realize I'm really good with the short, very focused attention for a while, and then I'm happy to hand it off and let other people deal with outreach and marketing and that kind of stuff. So that's what I do.
I was just going to note the big thing, I think, when you're talking about your stuff is that you're very passionate about it, and you're passionate about that documentary thing. And I think that's the biggest thing that you have to take away from what we're all going to tell you up here, is that whatever you're doing, you absolutely have to have that passion for it, because that is going to make yourself succeed, depending on where you are. So sometimes you want to collaborate with someone or do something with someone, and someone will come to you and say, I have a story, maybe a narrative, and you're like, that's really not something I want to pursue, because you're going to live with that project for a long period of time. And if you are not absolutely passionate about that type of project, whether it's a documentary, story, a short, acting, you're gonna peter out. You're gonna lose that love of it. So you just have to stay passionate about your project.
David, you touched upon it earlier, and it brought up something that I wanted to have everybody address. And the industry has changed so much, and where films are distributed now, right? They no longer just go to the big screen. They obviously, when we were growing up, they had the ABC After School special. Some of us are old enough to remember that. Movies going straight to television, miniseries, Roots, things like that. But now, Netflix and all of these other companies and Amazon Prime, movies are going straight to other locations. So how do you even begin to try to get your movies to those locations, and can it still be profitable, and how profitable?
In my experience, we used an aggregator to get to several of the markets that we went to, and if anybody doesn't know what an aggregator is, it's a long story. I'll just Google it. But for us, these fourth-tier platforms didn't make a lot of financial sense early on. If you get an exclusive release through Netflix, that's awesome, because they will pay you for that to be exclusively listed in Netflix and only come out there. But as soon as you're on Netflix, that's kind of the last money you're ever going to make on your movie, because I don't think anybody necessarily wants to pay $6 to rent a movie that's free on Netflix through Cablevision. So it becomes a very business-oriented decision in my mind, and in my experience, depending on your budget and who's in your film and how big your release was theatrically, I didn't find that those platforms made a lot of financial sense, at least until later on down the line. You want the biggest audience for your film, but you also have to take some pride in your work and say that it's worth money, and some of these new media platforms will try to run you over. Your first offer will be an insult, and your second one will be less insulting.
Yeah, just that's true. I do think knowing finding an attorney and making sure all your paperwork from the top down is in order is huge. With my first film, I knew nothing of that, and when I did get approached for distribution, I went and met with an attorney, and when they told me they're called deliverables, everything you needed to turn over, it was going to cost me more than it cost me to make the film to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. We're not doing this. So with my second film, obviously, a little bit wiser. And when you get to that place, that's a huge piece of it. It's a big check off your list, and now you're just talking with these distributors. And you will have the offers where you're like, what? Do they know what we did? All that kind of stuff. They know the cast I've given them. Like, you have all of that. But one of the things, just to talk about, you have all these different platforms now, is true. One of the things as a filmmaker I think is important to realize is you have to know the value of your film before your distributor does. Because your distributor is going to put it right through the mill that they put every other film through. And that's their job. Your job is to say, no, listen, look, I've got this hook, I've got these actors, what about this, what about that? And if you get a good distributor, and we did our films with The Orchard, they were very proactive with us, but I think partly because we were very clear about the things that we wanted for our film. And so I think that's an important thing. It's not just, oh, here's my baby, go have fun, go take care of it. And I think that's a little old school, but now you have social media, you have ways to create an impact in your film and find an audience for your film. And one of the things we did is we were coming out, Netflix was our last thing, which we're on now, but on the trajectory of the film, we did a Kickstarter to raise extra P&A basically for us as the filmmakers, and myself as the writer, co-writer and director, and then the other writer and lead actor, we went to the opening nights all over the country last year when it opened up in theaters. As many as we could, we went and did Q&As, and then it just got bigger. And then by the time we were on iTunes and all the digital platforms, those sales were great. And then Netflix, and now we're doing the overseas thing, and you're just never done. You're never done with your film, and you have to embrace that, and you have to stick in there, and you have to be a voice for your film, because as much as they love it, even the big, I've had great friends who've had great sales at Sundance, and you're like, great, your movie's phenomenal, it's gonna do great, and nobody hears about it because the distributors are in it for a different reason. Stay vocal about your film, make sure it's ready to be distributed, but then get in there and fight for it. That's just another piece of the distribution thing I want you guys to think about.
You have to be the ultimate salesperson.
Yeah, the whole time. The American side, you can get it on, I'm just kidding.
Should,
Can I jump
Go
in?
ahead.
Real?
Absolutely.
But so these are for short films. So just so you know, things like Amazon, Netflix, you can't just submit it. I can't say, I finished this great film, do you want this Netflix? They're either gonna come in early. I'm doing a film right now that'll be on Netflix 2018. They commissioned it, or you can sell it to them after, which you get less money, or an aggregator comes in. So just so you know, it's not even an option for an individual to put their thing on Amazon, or that's not how the industry's gone. You do need to go through a third party, but places like Vimeo are fantastic. And then you can do the same kind of thing. A lot of people say, let's skip even festivals, because you get so many more people to see your screen. Ironically, this is a great turnout here, so thank you for coming out. But a lot of festivals, not many people come to your show. So some people just bypass film festivals and show it now on Vimeo and similar platforms. So keep that in mind. It's the same kind of marketing. You got to do the social media. And if you're a director or a producer, you're in this film for a long time. From pre-pro for the next decade or 20 years, you're still going to be try to get the film into colleges for educational things. If you're documentary, that's where you make your money for years on out. But yeah, just keep that in mind.
since so many millennials live on their phones, the internet, I mean, we live on the internet too. Has the internet changed the way we showcase and broadcast?
I just sound mixed a film, a 4K film, in a massive screening room, and I was like, how soon will it be that when we do that? This was yesterday, I was mixing this. Everybody's gonna see it on our phone.
Right.
Yet we shot it in 4K, which means you see every person's pore. These aren't narrative, no one's got makeup. It's I don't wanna be in a 4K thing, but it is the industry and it's what Netflix requires, but that is the future. It's not going to change. So I think, but people are still wanting theatrical. So I think in my experience, most filmmakers are still previewing it, color correcting it, editing it with the idea that it's going to have a large screen production, even though 95% will see it on a tablet or smaller. But I don't think people have not switched it. I'm like, when are we going to color correct on a screen this big? Because that's where we're going to see it.
I hear everybody touching the. Did you have something else to add?
I had something. The other thing with the internet that is very, very important, and it's not necessarily a new thing, it's been 17 years, is your film will be immediately available for high definition download 5 minutes after it comes out on iTunes. The bootlegging that will happen is borderline unstoppable. No, it's unstoppable. It will be bootlegged. You can have Google links removed. You can spend your life doing that. You have about an hour of exclusivity, but that's just something you're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, so maybe consider getting your film out there your first film out there quickly. I know people, try not to make money from it because you're not going to make that much money off of an independent short film. Very different if you're a finance film. But if it is truly an independent short film, it's not going to be a cash cow, more than likely. But you can... what you want to do is get that out, get people to see it, get people to like it, to share it, get some buzz, and then your follow-up film. Most people say, come into your meeting with 2 or 3 film ideas, because it's that film that somebody may give you money up front to put you as to a paid filmmaker that's getting, So just keep in that mind. It might be something that there's a little bit of sacrifice on the first one to kind of, as they say, it's your calling card, get it out there, and then use that momentum to your next one.
How important is it to know a little bit of everything? Or let me pose it a different way. Should writers know how to direct, know how to produce, even know how to act in front of a camera, know how to edit?
Well, unless you've got somebody financing your whole career when you're in college, I think, myself, I do not like writing at all, but I've written autobiography, I've written screenplays, and it was more just because I had to. You know, I started out as an actor. I went through a really intensive acting program in Los Angeles with Milton Casellas and Jeffrey Tambor and Richard Lawson called the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And in there, you learn how to direct, you learn how to act, and if you want, you could write pieces as well. I think the benefit is that when you're working with other people, like everybody on the stage, you get to understand their point of view a little more deeply. Where if you didn't, for example, there's some directors that, you know, famously, Alfred Hitchcock didn't really respect directors. They were like, you know, pieces on a table. But in general, there's a sense of empathy that you have for other people when you understand the work they do. So I would say that that would be the most benefit out of learning other things that they're in the field that you're doing, you know?
Yeah, I just would add to that too. I think everything you can sit in on, you can watch, you can participate in, will just make you better at the thing it is you may want to focus in. So, and I agree that especially when you're starting out, you are going to do everything. You're going to write it, you're going to direct it, you're going to edit it likely. I think if you're not going to edit it, it's not a bad idea as a director to load all of your footage and organize it so you and your editor can have a conversation that's connected and you're not asking for something you never shot, which is what my editors always joke around about, not with me, but that's their biggest complaint is that a director will be like, yeah, what about that shot, you know, where the girl in the red dress? And they're like, that sounds fantastic. You didn't shoot that, but it sounds like a good shot. So I think if you do that, that helps you with the editing. But I do think the more you can do, and if you can't do it, meaning you can't produce a film financially, get on a set and assist a producer. Do whatever you can do because it will always make you, the empathy's there, but it also just, the process becomes manageable, becomes possible, and you get better at knowing what you're asking for. And as certainly as from a directing and a writing standpoint, you need to know what you're asking for from folks.
One little thing.
I was going to ask John, especially what you do.
Once,
so collaborative. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say it depends on what level you want to be at. As an executive producer, I pride myself on the fact that I know how to do everybody's job because I feel like I don't earn their respect if I as saying things in front of a DP that director of photography that doesn't really make any sense, that doesn't you know, show that I have basic knowledge of how he or she does their job, then they don't respect me, they don't respect my vision. Same thing is true on mostly on the technical side, but also on the editorial side. I would just say practically for any of you who are looking to get in, get a foot in the door, one of the interview questions that I ask people that are interviewing for jobs with me is, do you know Avid or Final Cut? And if they don't, I say, go learn it, and then please come back to me afterwards. You should have a baseline understanding of how to shoot and how to edit, and most importantly, write. If you cannot write a treatment, even if it's just a 2-paragraph treatment for your project, and make it sound sexy, and have it, forgive me, be grammatically, you know.
No, you don't.
Yeah, grammatically correct. Then again, you're not going to get very far.
one little thing I'd like to add about that subject matter is a lot of times I've seen people learn a lot of different skills from writing, directing, acting, but stay humble because there are people who really know the craft fully and you don't, you know, so don't go there thinking that you're a great director or a great actor just because you've taken some one-on-one classes, you know. People like me have been an actor for 30-something years, you know, so that's where I find people bump up against things when they try to do too much. They think in their mind they know the craft. You don't yet know the craft until you put the time and effort into it.
I agree with being humble and learning from people who you're around. I would add Premiere to your questions, which is now the latest. But what was the last thing you said? I forgot what I was going to say now.
Which one?
I can't remember.
John.
You hit on something that made me think. What an important question. That's all right.
Well, you'll remember.
Well, I was just going to say, while you're thinking about it, even with us, when we interview people for internships or we're doing something or I'm encountering someone, I'm always looking for someone who's really enthusiastic, who's very passionate, who's upbeat, who's positive, and knows those things that that you want. For us, we do a lot of office stuff. It's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. And so we want someone who's able to talk on the phone, who's able to communicate with people, who can be polite. And it's also a balancing act when you're dealing with someone, especially on a government level, because you may be getting resistance from someone who has no concept of filmmaking or anything. And we want someone who really, I'll take personality and enthusiasm over anything, because especially if you have the willingness to learn, we'll go there, because our interns will do that.
I just also want to add to that, because we've talked about like know all these things, found all these things, and that is important, but it's also really valuable to know what you don't know and to turn to the people who you've brought in and say, I don't know, I'm blanking. This was the shot I had planned today. I had it all worked out, and now we can't do it, and I can't. My needle isn't moving. You turn to the people that you trust and that you collaborate with, your producers, your DP, whoever it is that you've got that ear with, and you say, we've got to change something, or I don't have the answer, and that's also okay. I just want to put that out there, because I do think there's a lot of like, I know, until the whole production's taken down. So it's okay to not know and find the people who can give you those good answers or support you in finding it yourself.
Yeah, so I know where the initial question was about what do you need to know, and I think it's important that you know about things. I don't think you necessarily have to know how to do things. You don't need to be able to pull focus really well like a first AC in order to direct a film. You need to know what your scene's about and what your inspiration is and what story you're trying to tell. But even if you can't do a sequence in Premiere, you do need to know what a good cut is. And if you're going to talk to a DP, you need to know your lenses, you need to know the different cameras and what they're capable of. So you have to have an approximate knowledge of many things. You don't need to be an expert. You can die in stagnation trying to learn everything. There's too much. You need collaborators. And you also need to know that your best collaborator may not be your friend who's necessarily the most enthusiastic person. You need someone who has expertise where you're weak. You need to know where you're weak. So for me, when I did my first film, knowing it was my first, when I did my first feature, I felt like photography was one of my weaknesses. And I hired Lisa Rinsler as my DP, who has been around since the 90s and is this brilliant artist. And I told her when we interviewed, I really might need you to keep me from stepping on any landmines, because I don't know what I don't know. They're unknown unknowns to me. And that's an important collaborative relationship. Those are the kind of things where you need expertise, and I was able to work with my approximate knowledge and her expertise to make the best film possible.
David said something important, like you're talking about passion and knowing how to work with people. I read a book by Elia Kazan, who is one of the biggest director-producers. He did, On the Waterfront, Marlon Brando, James Dean. He worked with all these people as director. And he said, the most important thing in this business is to learn how to be with people, because you're always in a community. You're always working with somebody, So I remember that. And that to me, you may think you may not work with this person again, but you may down the line be working with this person again, and you just finish, cursing them out or something, and not seeing that they're a human being, treating them like trash. And it works on the high and down, and it works down and up. You just got to learn how to work with people.
And you don't know who knows who in the industry, like you said, because you may be 10 degrees from somebody, but they know somebody who knows somebody. So obviously, watch what you say. Be
I mean,
to
you
what
got to be
said
real. You
before.
got to, share your point of view, but with a grain of salt. You're not, it's just your point of view. It's not. You understand?
Before we get to Q&A, I just wanted to say, is there anything else that you wanted to get out there to the audience before we start the Q&A in 5 minutes?
And brush your teeth before you go to work. That's it.
Especially if you're going to act with Janet Jackson.
And vanity.
And vanity, that's true.
I don't know.
I remembered what I was going to say, which is the
There it
time
is.
has passed. But to follow up on what he said was, but I do think, is anybody developing a film right now? Do we have any people that are, your elevator pitch, your treatment is so significant. I love it when a filmmaker comes to me to approach me about a film and they've got, you know, whether it's a 2-page treatment or, and these are for documentaries, a 1 paragraph or your log line, because it's most helpful for me if a director can really describe the film they want to make and why they want to make it and who the characters are. And when someone says, I don't have it, well, I don't really know. And there is with documentary, you don't know how it's going to be, but people need that passion, and people are more wanting to work with you when you can really encapsulate this in a very quick elevator pitch. So, you know, you better believe Quentin Tarantino could pitch Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs very quickly. So it's not to be underestimated. It can evolve, and you can recognize who your audience is. If you want it to be more salesy, you can BS it a little bit to who your crowd is, but it's something that's, I think, it's very important, and you can always go to like filmfreeway.com or Without a Box, and that's where you're going to submit your film to film festivals, but you don't want to wait till you've got a film to submit. You want to kind of, and that's going to ask you, what's your log line? Do this in 120 words. Do it in 2 sentences, because that's what festivals need like this to present it, and the earlier you start that process, it just helps you craft what you want to say.
I would just add one thing too, with regard to treatments, and I agree with that, is also know who you're selling it to. Yes. And I just sold a couple of movies to Lifetime, and I know that Lifetime's mantra right now is it's very, very female, obviously, but it's very, very female. They're looking for stories about strong women. So I tailored the treatment for the 3 projects that I had in mind that would specifically capitalize on buzzwords that I knew would appeal to their marketing strategy. So really, really do your research. Find out where the distribution outlet that you're pitching to, or that somebody is pitching to on your behalf, where are they headed in terms of their audience, and then that will help you tailor your treatment.
I just want to riff on that for 1 second. I think, is there anybody here that thinks they're going to be an independent filmmaker at some point? Okay, this is going to be really important. You are in the film business. Presumably at some point, you're going to walk into a room with a relative stranger and ask them to give you upwards of $1 million. You better know what you're doing with that money, where it's going to go, when it's going to go, how you're going to spend it, when they can expect to see their return on investment. I understand everybody here is an artist. I'm an artist. It is insufficient to fall back on saying, but I'm an artist, so I don't really deal with, like, you're a producer, you need to know this. You're a director, you need to know this. It may not be as important in other fields. If you're going to be a gaffer, you're cool. You don't need to know this, but this is a business, and there are people putting a lot of money that is theirs in absolute trust in you, and you need to reassure them that they have a reason to do that.
So fake it till you make it. You know, if you work on.
Last word from Thomas.
Jump off of that for 1 second, because you said something really critical about it being a business, and I want to add to that. You know, those of us who are raising money for films, there are a lot of different ways where we can raise money for films. One of the most common ways is asking people for money and saying we're going to give them profits if our film makes money. If you don't do that the right way under the law, you can be committing a crime. Crime, I said crime, and that's right. The securities laws govern how you can raise money. If you don't do that properly, not only can you, at the end of the day, let's face it, a lot of films don't make money. I wish they all did, but if your film does not make money, your investors can then come to you and say, I'm shocked to find out that you did not file a Regulation D exemption and it was an unlicensed and unregistered security. Give me my money back, please. And that's the least of your worries. All this is by way of saying that if you're planning on raising money by offering somebody a percentage of the profits, you need to see a securities attorney. And lest you think that I'm shilling for myself, I'm not a securities attorney. Don't come see me with this stuff. I can refer you to somebody. I do production stuff. I'm just trying to save you from, at the end of the day, holding the bag labeled securities crime.
Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, everyone. So now, for the last 25, 30 minutes or so, I think we tried to touch upon a wide variety of subjects here, but there may still be questions that all of you have out there. So this is really where you get a chance to ask the experts up here. I believe we'll have a microphone going around, or are we just going to stand up? We do have a microphone going around, so please raise your hand. I know we have some thoughtful questions out there. Raise your hand and stand up so we can see who you are as well. So let's begin right over here in the front row. Preston?
I'll just stand up. I had a question for the lawyer. I know that, like, I've made a short film, and I know that there are sites that will download your short film, and they'll put it out, and they'll put it in front of distributors, other festivals, and things like that. Now, I was just wondering, what are, like, the pros and cons of that? And, like, because I like to have my own short film, like, up on YouTube. It doesn't make, like, it makes, like, 3 cents, but, like, still, I like to retain that kind of rights, and what are, like, the pros and cons of that kind of situation?
Well, let me start with a blanket statement. Any answer I give is not legal advice. Okay, that being said, and this is being recorded.
Any what?
And you ever notice that it's only the lawyers, that point out what they say is not legal advice. So register,
you pay 'em.
right, exactly,
So
till
you
you
pay
pay them,
for 'em.
and then, yes. So register the copyright first and foremost before you put it online. And a lot of what we said here today I think is absolutely valid, that be prepared to kiss it goodbye in terms of the pirated downloads. Also, what we said about it, once you've released the whole thing to the public, it can be very hard to monetize it down the line in other platforms. That being said, I think there is a lot of value to putting short films out there to increase your reputation. And this is, sort of a statement I want to make to those of us who are not millennials out here. The millennials understand how to work social media. A lot of my clients who are not millennials don't recognize how absolutely critical it is to work social media. So putting something on YouTube as a feeder to the other projects you do, I think is a great idea. But it may, once you release it for free, why buy the cow when you get the milk for free? It may be harder for you to try and sell it or license it later on. There are a couple of examples of films that have done that quite well. But in general, once you've released it for free, you've released it for free, and you're just then looking at the numbers from YouTube ad rev as your primary financial revenue in.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Hello. Awesome being here. I just had a film screen. I'm a filmmaker. And this question is to all of you, but specifically Thomas. I'm also an NYU grad.
All right.
And
yay, Tish.
yeah. So we have a script, and we have friends in LA who've worked for production companies, and they basically say, if your script is unsolicited, it goes in the trash.
Yes.
So my question is, how do we as filmmakers get someone like you to solicit our script to those individuals, and do you have a business card?
Absolutely to the latter. My first job out of NYU, I worked for a literary agency in Los Angeles. So I was the reader, I did the coverage, and I was the gatekeeper between somebody like you and the agent. And I've buried the lead a little bit. The answer is if you have an agent or maybe an attorney, that's the best way to do it traditionally. Entering contests, winning contests, you will have producers come to you. Very often the problem is also you want the right producer to come to you, and there's really a danger of being a first-time screenwriter, having a producer come to you and asking for a shopping agreement to shop your film around, and they take it to the wrong places, and basically it's been seen by everybody in Hollywood and no one wants to buy it anymore. You're not going to get around submitting a film unsolicited and having it go into the circular file, so to speak, because of legal liability issues. Hollywood, you just have to read. And by the way, those of you who are interested in the film industry, business side of things, I highly recommend the Hollywood Reporter, THRESQ.com. Those students I have in the audience here know that this is sort of required viewing. It gives you the up-to-date on the business deals and the lawsuits that are happening in Hollywood, and absolutely studios know that they have to throw it into the circular file if it comes in unsolicited, because there's too much of a danger of they're developing something at the same time that's very similar to yours. You know, you said something very important. Stop worrying about people taking your ideas. And I absolutely second that, because everybody is developing a version of the same idea. You know, there's a traumatic event that happens in the world, and everybody's going to write a screenplay about it. But to answer your question, if you can get an agent, that's great. How do you get an agent? By winning a film festival. Filmfreeway.com has a lot of the festivals that you can enter and hopefully win. And honestly, if you can pick up the phone, because before I was an attorney, you know, I landed an agent for my writing. I picked up the phone and I essentially had a 15-second pitch for what I was doing, and I had a couple of attachments already that people had already heard of, and I had it down to a science. So I picked it up and said, wait, before you hang up, here's what the film's about, and I also have so-and-so and so-and-so attached. Do you want to see the script? So, you know, all of those are good ways. And then working personal contacts. But getting it out there, entering screenplay festivals, I think is the most realistic first step to getting to an agent, which is going to be the one that you really want to see. Any other advice along those lines from the rest of the crowd?
Is it one that you're writing or also directing? Co-directing. Try to get an actor attached. I think that,
Yeah, attachments.
If it's more of like an independent thing.
Right.
If it's more of an independent, you know, 10 million or less, let's say, it's independent anymore.
Wow.
Well, anyways, but it's, you know, I mean, Hollywood's a little bit different, as they're saying, but, you know, getting an actor attached to it, and then go to producers that you've seen do other films, and if in lieu of getting an agent, you know, of people who are just writing scripts that don't want to direct, you can also go through an agent in competitions, but that would be my approach.
I just want to add one other thing. I also find that there's, even if your script was solicited, it goes in a pile with a bunch of other scripts that is already this high, and that person goes home at night and like picks the smallest one and reads it. So one other way, if you have the means to do, and this is how the American side of the film that's on Netflix right now, I swear to God that was on a plug. How we got it made, one of the reasons we got attachments and producers and eventually money is we went and shot a trailer of the film. We went and shot it, and it looks, if you watch the trailer and then you watch the film, there's a lot of, it's almost the same movie. Like, we just really went and we said, okay, what's a trailer? It's all the things that make you want to see something. And so that's what we did. I edited it, we got the music, the whole thing, and then that's what people said, oh, let me read the script. Or that's how, you know, actors that attach themselves, I'm sure, and actors are just going to read their part that you're offering them too, by the way. So they saw that, and then they went to their part in the script and said yes, you know. So that's a really great way to, like, give something to somebody in an email, hey, this is what I'm working on. And we had a lot of people say, well, why do you need my money? It's already made, which is great. You know, that's not the film, but if you give me money, I'll make the film.
Yeah, I mean, the short, you guys also, my short film, that was a short film I did because I wrote the full-length feature. You know, I'm shooting 2 teasers for another feature I wrote as well.
I would also say, if you haven't done something somewhat large in the past, it's very unlikely that a studio would take it's possible they'll take a spec script. To take a spec script and say, we love this so much, we want you to direct it. Filmmaking is a dream, and so I'm not here to discourage anybody's dreams, and I would say tackle it exactly the way you hope it turns out and hope for the best, because if they're going to option the script, they're going to option the script. If they're going to allow you to direct, they're going to allow you to direct, but you can never be married to things turning out the way you want in this business. So when you say, like, I want to direct it, that's a want on your item list. If anybody can think of an instance where, like, Warner Brothers or somebody in the past 5 years has picked up an unknown director, show of hands. Really? So it happened to somebody, and it can happen again. There's a guy, so it can happen.
It could be you.
And it could be you, but I would say, just, like, you can't allow stuff like that to break your heart. You have to just push forward. It is a dream, it is a process, and you have to develop and build a career.
I think the biggest thing at the end of the day is it's going to come down to you doing it, and you're going to have to do it. And at some point, at least with the 2 projects I did, is we went through this path and it was really tough. And finally, I decided I'm just going to raise money to make them. I'm just going to make it myself. It's been quite a while. We were on Netflix as well at the end of our digital cycle. And when we started doing that, because I couldn't get into the doors, I just talked to everyone I possibly could when I was trying to raise money for it. And it's going to come down to you eventually making it. Even if those doors keep on closing, you're going to keep on knocking. But at some point, you may just decide that you're just going to make it, whether you make a trailer or whatever it may be. I think you're just going to have to do it.
David, back to Taimak.
There's something funny. I heard Oprah Winfrey said, don't look for help, Because what that means is that you have to get that you're the source of it all, That you're the source. So as Jerry was saying, what's the likelihood of something like that happening, right? Well, you are to say what the likelihood of something like that is happening, Yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, for every up, there's a down. For every black, there's a white. So there's an opposite for everything. So if you are the source, you have to believe in yourself. And, I was a kickboxing champion. You have to believe someone's going out there to beat your ass, You have to believe that you can win. You have to believe that you're stronger, more powerful, and just you're going to have the heart this person doesn't have. So it's the same way that you approach this business. If you're going to go out there and think that you're just some meekly victim after the first rejection, then you'll never make it in anything in life, So you really got to go all out.
We have a question here. Did you want to add something?
Add very quickly
Okay.
to this. There's a new route into getting screenplays sold that's really emerged in the past 5 years or so. Back in the 90s, the spec script was the hot young kid on the block that was catching studios' eyes. Comic books. Now, it doesn't work for every single film property, obviously. But if you have an action-oriented film property that might be a good comic book, hiring a graphic designer, an illustrator who's done this work before, commissioning a comic book series out of your own pocket is going to cost you far less than shooting it as a feature film, and it's an instant storyboard. And I can't tell you, I work in the comic book space as well, and I can't tell you how many producers I now rep, or writers of comic books I rep, that have producers just coming to them because they have a published comic book, whereas in the past it was sort of the wisdom that, hey, don't give us storyboards, that's the director's job. You're a writer, just give us the screenplay. If you have something that would fit in the comic book or graphic novel arena, that's something that absolutely, that's what Hollywood is looking at as a hot way of viewing properties now.
I believe we have a question in the middle. Preston, over here.
I'm just going to switch up the question because we have a TV pilot in this festival, and we made the project. We have the 10 episodes written. Where do you go with it? How do you approach Netflix? We've had things put on Netflix, Amazon already, other past short films. Do you need an agent? Which is the right way to go about that?
Did you say you've had things on Amazon and Netflix before?
Yes.
Who
Movies
put
that were
those-
shot 10 years ago. It's like a 9-year-old movie,
No,
short film.
but who? I think you go back through your Rolodex first and you start seeing who
Yes.
who you know, because if you've already had something in that space,
Right. I think it was a little
then
different
it may
than
be
it is
different.
right
It
now
may,
today, the streaming.
Yeah, very much so. But my point is just that
Right.
you may know somebody. No, that you just may know somebody that maybe,
Sure.
even if it's not the direct person, I think I would look at there first before, I think you're talking about maybe trying to find somebody else to take it to them.
Well, I'm thinking of which space do you decide where your pilot goes? Do you go to regular TV? Do you go to Hulu? Do you go to Netflix?
Well, that's
with
depending
it?
on your project. I think
Right,
I think
right.
you do a lot. You may probably have already done this. You research where the kind of story who's
But
into that.
the actual people, who do you approach with it? Do you go to an agency? I'm on the production side. I'm the producer side, so I don't really know that part of it.
I mean, I feel like there's I don't want to monopolize. I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it. So you could take it to an agency. You could, if you have an inroad there. But I think it's about finding those inroads and starting to connect the dots and seeing how you get to the next
Right.
person, but it's certainly knowing who is interested in this kind of topic and who wants to tell this kind of story, because there's so many digital platforms now, there's so many audiences out there, there's so many people, like he was just talking about knowing his audience, and I think that that's really important. You know your audience and you go to them and you say, listen, I know Lifetime, this doesn't excite you, so whatever that is, I think you do that, and then you start to connect those dots, and then you do start cold calling.
So you basically use the connections you have already, you're saying? There's not like another avenue to go.
I think there's a lot of, the thing is that I think there's a lot of avenues, whether it's going to an agency, but I think if you do that, you start to be really specific. I think that the more specific you can become, the more the next.
You could also try to find some assistance with a production company. It could be a small or medium-sized production company that has somebody in their ranks that specializes in development. Most of the development executives have conversations on a regular basis with the people at Netflix and Amazon and cable television and network television companies, and so they kind of know what kind of content they're looking for. So maybe you know somebody that has a production company and you can strike a deal with them. Maybe there's just a finder's fee or a fee that they hook you up.
Yes, that's what I was interested in.
Yeah, something like that. And there's a lot of, you could go locally, you could go to New York City and find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of production companies that might be interested in your project, but be very genre specific.
Well, that's what I was asking. How do you know which one to go to?
What is the series about, more or less?
It's Greenlit. It's about Hollywood. It's the back end of Hollywood producers.
Drama, comedy?
It's dramedy.
Dramedy.
Yeah, it's mostly a drama. They call it a dramedy, though.
That's pretty ubiquitous. I mean, that
Yes.
could work anywhere.
Yeah.
There's one thing I should say just about distribution. I don't know if you guys heard, but Facebook has just announced, too, that they're opening up their channels for both short form and long form. That's a really, really good thing to look into. Twitter is actually investing money now in studios. So, since a lot of you that are, budding filmmakers are used to leveraging social media, leverage it even more now.
So besides a pilot and the 10 scripts, which seems like a lot of content, do you have a show Bible?
I'm just the producer. It's actually the filmmaker. He definitely has a show Bible, yes.
Okay, so what you probably want to start doing when you even find the person, you don't want to send them your 30-minute pilot and 10 60-page scripts. They're not going to look at it. It's too much too soon. It's, you hold hands before you kiss. So you want to send them, hey, listen, I got this project. I think it works at your network. Here's my log line. Here's my short synopsis. Here's my long synopsis. If they like that, it's a pitch sheet, essentially. You want a pitch sheet. If they like your pitch sheet, then you can send them, they'll probably ask to see that you can say, hey, listen, I got a Bible. I got a pilot script. I have the pilot shot. If they're into it at that point, they might ask you for any one of the three of those, all three of those. That's how a TV deal usually starts in most of my experience with it. And bear in mind, I'm a film guy, not a TV guy, but I've dabbled in this, and that always seems to be the beginning of the conversation. Give me the elevator pitch. Okay, I like that. Let me get a taste of what I'm dealing with, and it'll start to unfold. You know what? I love this. This is great. Let me see the pilot. Okay, that's great too. Now let's start to talk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I hope that answered. Let's try to get one or two more in. Did somebody have one right here and then over here?
Hi, I have a trailer in this festival, and I am almost done with my documentary, and I'm rounding third base, heading home, and I kind of hit a wall with funding, which is everybody's million-dollar question about raising capital. And I'd like the panel's opinion on the one quality, the one asset in a project that is most important when a financier is looking to invest into a project.
I think it's definitely, am I going to see a return on an investment? Can you convince me that I'm going to get my money back? Because films can easily pay an investor back, but they have a reputation for not being able to do so. So you have to make the investor feel comfortable that you've mitigated their risk while not committing securities fraud.
This is a documentary?
Yes.
Okay, so I would be upfront. Most documentaries do not make money. And most deals for documentaries are rarely going to be an investment-based one because people have learned at this point, the same way, you know, I always tell, back to the whole internship, if somebody says work for free, then I'll give you a percentage of the profits after, it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal for an independent crew person, editor, anybody. It was a really good deal for, Staying Alive. John Travolta made all of his money because he did that deal in Hollywood a long time ago, but that's the myth that so anyway, so number one, documentary, be upfront. Find somebody who cares about your project. Documentary is a genre that has many different topics that people are gonna put their money up because they care about that topic. Same thing for same thing for her question, you know, find the network that's interested in your thing. Find the production company, find the distribution company. Look at other documentaries in your area that you like. Take a step further, see who their collaborators were, see who their documentary gets a lot of government funding. It's tedious, it takes a long time to apply for grants, but if you get in that loop and do it, it might happen. So look at other films you admire and see who they have. But it's really working on that elevator pitch, finding somebody who's not guaranteed to make money, but who can maybe make money. The big thing right now is what we call branded content. If you're making a documentary about motorcycles, get it out to people who make money in the motorcycle space, and they can find other ways of like soft money marketing that this can benefit for them. This is really popular in documentary when it comes to like outdoor sports, X Games type stuff. You know, it's not that the documentary itself is making money, but Red Bull is gonna put, you know, they wanna have their name on it because they could use it for marketing. So it's really honing in what you have to see what, you know, in documentary specific, like what's the topic, and if there's other films like it, piggyback, call that director. Documentary filmmakers would take your call any day. And I think in general, like look and see if there's a pattern you can follow or if it's not been done before.
I was just going to say, at least when I was asking for money and it wasn't a documentary, people were really liked the idea of the story, liked the idea of the content. That's what they really went with. I mean, they were concerned about the money, they were concerned about getting their money back, and that was a question that always came up.
Concerned about it getting done.
Yeah,
they
and
don't necessarily want the money, they just don't want to they don't want to burn it. They want it to get complete and get seen.
right, and are they interested in that topic? Is it something that really interests them? Whether there's some sort of branded content you can do or anything like that. That's really what drives the process because that's going to interest them. That elevator pitch is going to interest them, and if it's something that has to do with that, you'll be able to move into it a little bit easier.
Website, and then there's, you know, if you're looking at government or funding, like look at your local film commissions, you know, depending how much money you want to make. Sometimes documentaries, $3,000 goes a long way. Sometimes you need 100,000. I mean, they could be $1 million, but, you know, I'm not sure what your needs are, but there are grants for smaller dollar amounts that are pretty regular cycles. So get on it, like, you know, NISCA, New York State Commission for the Arts or whatever.
Documentaries are a lot easier, even though they take time with the cycle. A documentary is a lot easier when you talk about grants because granting organizations historically do not grant narrative projects. That's just not what they do. But they do give grants out depending on what your topic is. Maybe it's on autism or whatever it may be. They will do stuff granting for something like that. Foundations will do that, especially if they have a strong interest in whatever your topic may be.
Okay, we had a hand over here.
Hi, this question is directed at John. You touched a lot on internships, and so for a young artist like myself, what are things that we can kind of focus on, and what are things that you look for that are key, along with editing, knowing editing programs, but what are other like really important things that you look for in interns and people who are trying to get their foot in the door?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm looking into the DP side or a gaffer.
Oh, wow. That's great. I mean, there definitely are a lot more people that I see that want to get into the editorial side or they want to be on camera, and it's great to see a young person that's really interested on the technical side. I think that I think that it's really about proximity. Unfortunately, I think it's about having the exposure to people that hire on an occasional basis to get your foot in the door. And it depends, obviously, if it's a union house or it's a non-union house. I'm assuming you're not in a union, right?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
So finding projects that are hiring non-union and just pounding the pavement. I mean, it's tough. I don't hire people that are on the technical side. I hire on the editorial side. I wish I had better advice for you, but if you want to stay after, I can give you the name of my operations guy that does hire occasional people that, on the tech side.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a question in the front row, and then back there if we have time.
Thank you. I just wondered if anybody had any experience with optioning and if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because I think they can tie up your work for a long period of time for a little bit of money.
Do you mean your work being optioned?
I'm saying if you have something and it's good, or you think it's good, and somebody thinks it's good, good enough to give you a certain amount of money to option it. And I'm not sure if I fully understand whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I'll give you the legal guy first, and I'll tell you.
Okay, so an option, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, an option is basically you're granting somebody the legal right to be the exclusive buyer of your screenplay or property for a limited period of time. Typically, that period of time is 18 months, 12 months, 18 months, and there are other option periods that can be extended. The trick with an option agreement, you have to make sure that when your option is being negotiated, that you're also concurrently negotiating the purchase terms with that option agreement. So it's really two contracts in one: the option, which is the exclusive right to purchase that screenplay, as well as the purchase terms for that screenplay acquisition. Is it a good thing? I think it's a good thing if you're planning on selling a screenplay and the person who is optioning it has shown a track record of getting things done. It's especially a good thing if there's actual money for the option. Now, let me be very clear. The ideal situation for a writer is to be paid for the option, that's for the exclusive right to take it off the market, as well as a promise to pay the purchase price. Too often those two are conflated. They're essentially two chances that you get for being paid. One of the things that I see happening more and more in my practice is the evil stepsister of the option agreement, the shopping agreement. Be very careful distinguishing between the two. A lot of producers will say, I want the right to shop your property around for a while. I'm not going to pay for it. I'm not going to negotiate the purchase terms right now, but I just want to take it off the market for a little while and see if anybody bites. That runs the risk of you having your property off the market without any concrete purchase terms being attached to that deal. And if you're not being paid anything up front to give up the right to sell it to another buyer, then you're really just hoping that that producer will purchase it in the next 18 months or so. So there are a lot of risks involved in that sort of scenario, but I think in general, if somebody who's optioning it has a good track record, then that's the way movies get acquired.
Okay, do we have time for one final question? That gentleman over there, if your question did not get answered or you didn't get a chance to ask it, the panel members will be available in the lobby following this.
Thank you. My name is Mikhail. I just moved here from Russia. So I have a lot of maybe a little bit silly questions because I'm trying to understand American system. So I have two questions. So first,
well, we have time for one, so pick one.
It's similar. So does it make any sense to find agent here, especially if you're if you have experience in a commercial, TV show, and films? And another question is where to find right producers?
What was that last?
Producers.
The right producers.
Yes, thank you.
What is it you want to do?
I have experience in films and TV shows and commercials, so I'm open.
Acting or directing? Or?
Directing.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, no one understands the U.S. system either, so don't worry about it.
Ah, okay.
But I can hand this over if someone else wants to.
Yeah, I think that your best bet is to make something that people care about, that people pay attention to, which is tough if you don't already have a producer. But also, there are festivals like this where aspiring people come and you're going to meet. When we ask, again, how many producers in the audience? There you go. Okay. Ask one of them. They're all producers. Somebody might help you. And if they're not the right person, you'll grow your network. And the next time around, maybe it will be the right person.
All right,
Can I answer one thing to that?
Okay.
But so if you're a commercial director, is that what you said? And you're new, so literally Google commercial director agencies in New York City. I mean, it's very common these days for filmmakers, independent filmmakers, narrative filmmakers, everybody, documentary certainly. I'm coming from documentary. You make more money doing commercials. So it's super common to overlap these two industries, right? So there are agencies, you put your reel together, you have a good website, you present it, but I can't tell you the name of companies off the top of my head, but a quick Google of the right words, commercial ad agency directors on staff, and you'll see them, look at what they have, you'll see that they represent, you'll have to some of them you sign an exclusive agreement with them, some of them you can be represented by, but that's how and then you're fresh, you're new, so you knock on the door and say, hey, I just came here, and you don't want to, I've got great skills, so, yeah, but the internet is incredible for researching films, projects like yours, who's involved, look at credit lists, look at IMDb to see who their crew members, who their production companies were, and contact them, because you're never going to be an individual contacting. There's almost always a person in the middle, so see who those are. Look at IMDb credits to find those companies.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the panel discussion. My thanks to Thomas, Jeremy, Jenna, John, Taimak, Jen, and David. Thank you all for coming. Remember, lots of more feature-length films, shorts tomorrow. If you haven't seen Lemon, it's coming up soon. Lemon is going to be released in theaters in 2 weeks. You can see the exclusive viewing here tonight, followed by The Strange Ones at 9. And, of course, Shooting Clerks is tomorrow at 5:15. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your evening.